To warm up a little bit, 55 on Tuesday, a little 54 action on Wednesday, 55 on Thursday. Recco was saying he played golf yesterday before he did the Rutgers game at night. Yeah, that means baseball really soon. That means a whole lot of things, including March Madness. And for the first time in a while, St. John's will be involved. And for the first time in a long while, they're going to be very involved. I'll tell you, it is amazing to watch Rick Pitino work this magic. Now, I don't think they'll crack the top five. That's coming out at 1. I think they're going to be 6 or 7. It will be sick if they are 5, but it's almost immaterial right now because, the ranking, it does create a bit of a status and certainly more buzz, but I'm not too wrapped up in that. I'm wrapped up in the job that this man is doing, and I've said for a lot of times, even before he was coaching St. John's. I think Rick is the greatest college basketball coach of all time. I really do. And, not to necessarily turn that into that kind of a debate or a conversation, but, the thing that Rick has done that so many of the older coaches either refused to do or were unable to do, he's adapted. Oh, kids transferring left and right? All right, I'll find the way to make it work. Oh, NIL money, we can make that happen? Yep, okay, here we go. Now I have a general manager, which they do, Matt, who's terrific. And they've got some more money, Mike Rapoli and others. Like, now St. John's is humming. And I was thinking about this. Like, I remember at his press conference where he said, we're going to be back. I guarantee it. St. John's is going to be back. And, like, the confidence in which he said it, even me, who has always looked at him as an all-time icon in the coaching world, maybe because I've been around St. John's so long, I'm sitting there saying to myself, all right, man, I want to believe you, and I kind of believe you, but I've been at St. John's a lot longer than you, and I don't know if you know what you're walking into. Like, not that they're not good people. They're amazing people. The previous people had no idea how to run a basketball program, zero. So, think about what Rick had to do. He had to first get a roster. And he's okay. So he's adapted with that. Get some players, coach them up, work them hard. All right, that's what Rick does best, and that's what Rick's done everywhere. BU, Providence, Louisville, Kentucky. Before that, Greece, you name it. That's what he does. But I don't think people really think about this because why would you? I think you're more concerned with the basketball. Rick Pitino is in essence pulling an entire university out of the Stone Age. Now, he's got some help. They finally hired a president who cares about basketball. And without that, you're cooked. You're cooked. Father Shanley, Providence, knows how important basketball is to, especially a Catholic school without a football budget. Check. They got the president. Then they got Rick. And then, obviously, you want to have an AD who is in alignment with that. And Eddie Cole, I think, is phenomenal. I've known Eddie for 20 years when he was just starting out at St. John's. I followed him at Fordham, and I'm a huge fan as a person. I think he's great. Raises money. But, and Rick has said this off the record and on the record, but maybe a little more off the record. I don't want to divulge too much here, but, he's basically saying, I got to get buildings built before I'm done. He is pulling them from the 80s into the mid-2020s. He's grabbing them, by the blazer. Guys, let's go. We got to do this. We got to have that. Like, when I tell you and I know that you've heard this, the facilities are antiquated, but, when you actually step in foot, when you walk inside Carter-Sec Arena, you may as well have, a Sony Discman or forget about a cassette, actually. Like, you're walking back to 1985. I could bust out Run DMC. I could bust out Motley Crue. I think it's the 80s. And, in a month, he's like, all right, we need this, we need that, we need this, we need that. And literally, it was built. Now, it's not built the way it's going to be built with the new structure that's going up in 2027. I just say all this. I know more of you are consumed with the basketball, and you should be. But to understand what Rick Pitino has done, he is one of a kind. His energy is relentless. His focus is Jedi-like. And his basketball acumen is without peer. Don't tell me about, I'm not trying to disparage anybody, but, so I don't even want to say it like that. Don't tell me about John Wooden. That's unnecessarily aggressive. John Wooden's one of a kind. But understand, and I respect your opinion, but when I say Rick's the greatest college basketball coach of all time, I mean that. And many of you would say, well, what about Dean Smith? And what about, John Wooden? What about the Coach K? I got it. There's other Roy Williams. Yeah, I know. But take John Wooden, who, by most accounts, Wooden and Coach K are thought to be the two best coaches in the history of the game. John Wooden coached, I think he was at Indiana State for a couple years, but he coached at one place. I mean, the league was so different. And by the way, John Wooden had a money man. Don't get this thing twisted. Think that, UCLA did it on the up and up. John Wooden had a money man to get studs to UCLA. And he did it at one school. To me, the beauty, the magic, the power of Rick is whatever he has is transferable. It is incredible watching this guy operate. I remember asking him up at Providence in late December, do you think you could still coach in the NBA? He's like, there's no way. He's like, I couldn't do it from an energy perspective. You watch Rick coach. I mean, this guy on defense is he's like a lunatic in a good way. Calling out screens, just screaming, anticipating things. You can't do that 82 games in the NBA. The defense on this team is by far, it's not even close, the best in the history of St. John's. And I love Louis, and we revere Louis, and Louis' team locked down. Not like this. Nobody does. Maybe Houston, the Cougars. That is about it. And I really never thought, and it would sadden me, and I would never talk about St. John's on the air because I got to get ratings. My livelihood depends on what kind of numbers we get and what kind of revenue we produce. So why would I get on the air and talk about something that I care about and that I love, but that when nobody's going to, because I've done 1 million games at the Garden when there's 7,000 people there, or when they would get 15,000, 6 were UConn fans, or 7,000 were Orange Syracuse fans. Like the Saint, and it really, you have to really know me as a person to know how, just to understand the depth of the statement. But not much hurts me pertaining to sports, because as a dad and as a husband, you realize what so much more is important. The death of the St. John's brand hurt me more than anything connected to sports. It actually hurt my heart because I really think without St. John's being who they were in the 80s, I don't know if I'm doing what I'm doing now. That's how much they inspired me. That's how much they own the city. Like, and Rick said the other night, they are the 11th pro team in the NBA, in New York City, and they are. And, St. John's, even when they're down, Coach Mullen, Rick, Chris had a couple of big wins, but they never really got it going. Even when they were down, same with Norm back in the day, or Lavin, any coach, Mike Anderson, they knock off a top 10 team, back page of the Post. Johnny's getting love. But this is different. This is like that place sounds and looks and feels different than it has ever felt in my life, because my dad didn't take me to the game. We watched them on TV in the 80s with Chris. We watched them on TV on CBS, right? It is amazing to see. I don't think there's a ceiling. And oh yeah, by the way, guess who's starting to learn to shoot the ball a little bit better? St. John's, So just enjoy the ride and understand that it's not 1 year. Rick's coming back next year. He's not going to Indiana. He's not taking over at North Carolina. This is it for Rick. Rick is home, and Rick is staying. And Rick is building this thing out so that it's not just 2, 3, 4 magical years of Rick Pitino and then it's dead for another 30 and will never recover. Rick Pitino, when I say he's building buildings, this man is building buildings. It is awesome. It really is. Let me get Matt in New City, BT and Sal. Matt, what's happening?
What's going on, BT? So funny story. I'm not going to bore you, but I went to St. John's and they didn't have any dorms available for me. I went late, and I wound up getting a house with the St. John's basketball team just randomly.
What year are you talking, Matty? What year are you talking about?
2010.
Okay. DJ Kennedy, those guys?
That was Lavin's first year there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I got you. Yep.
Malik Booth and Deli Coker I lived with.
Big man Coker. Yeah, I remember him. Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. He was my roommate. So anyway,
there you go.
like you were saying, the facilities, if people don't believe you, when I first went there, I was shocked at the facilities because it almost looked like a high school gym.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very antiquated.
Mm-hmm.
And my point, too, with St. John's, because you never get to call the radio and talk St. John's basketball, but
now you're going to start.
It's very hard to watch them and then watch the Knicks. I think that St. John's' success and the way they play defense is turning me off to watching Knick games because it's such a different game almost when you watch the two different products.
It's an interesting point. That really is interesting, Matt. I don't know if that's impacted me. Thanks for the call. Now, I've been down on the NBA for a while, and I've just plotted through a lot of things, stylistically that are unappealing to me. But I love the Knicks. And the Knicks ran counter to what the rest of the NBA was turning into. Yeah, defensive indifference, all the stuff we talk about. And last year's Knicks, that wasn't them. So it was easy to watch the Knicks a year ago. And trust me, I even watched them when they were, I never stopped. I watched them when they had Van Horn. I never stopped. But this year, it feels different, and it looks different. And that's interesting. But, not just that St. John's is really good, but the way they're playing. Yeah, I could see that. If you're a basketball fan, you're a Knicks guy and a St. John's guy, and there's a lot of you. The way St. John's is playing, and then you watch the Knicks, you're like, oof, it's just not the same. I could see that.